Am I the a-hole for refusing to loan my friend money after finding out she spent her paycheck on a secret luxury vacation? I, 28F, have been friends with Emily, to 7F, since college. We were inseparable back then, bonding over late-night study sessions, travel dreams, and our mutual love for spontaneous adventures. Emily was always the carefree, live-in-the-moment type, while I was more of a planner. Despite our differences, we balanced each other out, and over the years, our friendship became a cornerstone in my life. But something shifted after college. While I focused on building my career and making smart financial decisions, Emily, well, didn't. She landed a decent-paying job, but her spending habits were wild. She always wanted the latest iPhone, designer clothes, or the trendiest new gadgets. Meanwhile, I was saving diligently, budgeting, and trying to plan for the future. Emily would constantly joke about how I was too serious, how I needed to loosen up and live a little. And for a while, I let it slide because, hey, it was her life. But things started to get awkward when she began asking for small favors. At first, it was nothing major, just covering a few drinks or spotting her some cash when she forgot her wallet. Then it escalated. She started asking for larger amounts, saying she was short on rent or behind on bills. And every time, I helped her out because I didn't want her to struggle. I always thought, it's what friends do, right? The thing is, she never seemed grateful. Whenever I loaned her money, she acted like it was no big deal. She'd promised to pay me back, but weeks would go by, and I'd have to awkwardly remind her, only to hear excuses. Oh, I'll get you next payday, or I'm still trying to sort out my finances. I figured it was a phase, and I didn't want to ruin our friendship over money, so I let it go. But the tipping point came 2 weeks ago. Emily called me in what seemed like a complete meltdown. She told me she was in serious financial trouble and couldn't make rent. Her voice was shaky, and she said her hours had been cut at work, leaving her completely strapped for cash. I was sympathetic. Life happens, right? She asked if she could borrow $500 to cover her rent for the month, promising she would get things together soon. I hesitated but agreed. I didn't have $500 just lying around, but I figured I could shuffle some things around to help her out one more time. That night, something felt off though. I couldn't shake this nagging feeling, so I decided to do something I hadn't done in a while. I checked her social media. Now, Emily isn't the type to post constantly, but what I found made my blood boil. There, on her Instagram, was a series of photos that told an entirely different story than the one she'd given me over the phone. Emily was on a freaking luxury vacation. And not just any vacation, a tropical beach resort with infinity pools, beachfront cabanas, fancy cocktails, and gourmet meals. I scrolled through her feed in disbelief. She had been posting these pictures quietly for the past week, trying to avoid drawing attention from people who knew her situation. The captions were the worst. Living my best life, and sometimes you just need to get away and recharge. Are you kidding me? She had called me practically in tears about how she couldn't afford rent, but had clearly spent thousands on a luxury trip. The next morning, she texted me again, asking if I had the money yet. I decided it was time to confront her. I asked her about the vacation, and at first, she was quiet. Then she gave me the lamest excuse I'd ever heard. She said it was a last-minute trip she had to take for her mental health, and that it didn't cost as much as it looked. She said she was cutting corners to make it work, but I saw the pictures. This was no budget trip. I told her straight up I wasn't going to loan her a single dollar after finding out about the vacation. She tried to downplay it, saying I didn't understand how stressed she had been and that the trip was a necessity. She said she'd been going through a hard time emotionally and that the vacation was the only thing keeping her sane. I reminded her that she wasn't asking me for a small favor anymore. She was asking for $500 for her rent, something that's serious, and not something I could just ignore. I couldn't believe that she would prioritize a luxury trip over her basic responsibilities, especially knowing that she had friends like me to fall back on. That's when she flipped the switch. She went from apologetic to angry, accusing me of being selfish and saying that I didn't care about her mental health. She said I had always been the better off friend. So why was I making such a big deal about a few $100s? She even accused me of holding money over her head and making her feel inferior. I couldn't believe it. I had bent over backward for this girl for years, and now she was guilt-tripping me for not bailing her out after she chose to spend her paycheck on a lavish vacation. I told her that this was the final straw, and I wasn't going to be her financial safety net anymore. Since then, Emily has completely ghosted me. She hasn't returned any of my texts or calls, and when I reached out to some of our mutual friends, I found out she's been telling them her version of events, basically painting me as a terrible friend who refused to help her out when she was going through a hard time. I even got a couple of messages from our friends saying that maybe I should have just given her the money to avoid this drama. I'm honestly torn. On one hand, I feel like I'm justified that I've helped her out for years, and this time she crossed a line. But on the other hand, some of our friends think I'm being too harsh, that everyone needs a break sometimes, and that maybe I should have been more understanding. I keep thinking back to all the times I've helped her, and now I'm wondering, am I the a-hole for finally saying no?